Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's session of Alchemizing HR, Navigating What's Next. Our topic, strategies and science to hire Europe's top sales talent. For those of you who are new to our community of learning, welcome. We're so thrilled to have you today. And for our returning friends and guests, it's wonderful to see you again. But if we haven't met, please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Clarissa Peterson. I'll be your host for today's episode. I'm a former chief HR and ethics officer, and I've had the privilege of working on every continent on the planet with the exception of Antarctica. Who knows? Never say never. I may make it there one day. I'm also the proud holder of the GPHR, the SPHR, and the leading professional in ethics and compliance certifications, and a former chair of the board of directors of HRCI. Today, I'm president, CEO, and an executive coach at Ohana HR. Our firm works with organizations to transform people and leaders one person at a time to make their best and highest impact. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. First of all, we know you get up early and stay up late to learn with us here at HRCI, and for that, we are so grateful. Go ahead and put your location in the chat so I can be sure to share it with our speakers a little later on. And it is really important to us, critically important to us, that Alchemizing HR is accessible to all. So we have a closed captioning service. If that's not a service you require, just go ahead and click on the show captions button on the bottom of your screen for additional instructions. So now let me introduce today's amazing speakers. Chris Danks. Chris has over 2 decades of experience collaborating with HR leaders worldwide, holding diverse HR and talent acquisition roles in renowned organizations like Verizon Business, Vodafone, and Honeywell. Chris is the visionary behind the Leadership Collective, a global community uniting HR and business leaders to enhance the leadership journey and support businesses in expanding their footprints globally. Chris and the Leadership Collective are strategic partners of HRCI, providing members with a valuable community platform, access to TLC content, real-time chat, and personalized guidance. Rachel Ivers is a business psychologist with 20 years of experience in designing and implementing award-winning people and culture programs. As a performance coach, she helps teams thrive by understanding relational dynamics and fostering high performance. She coaches leaders at pivotal moments in their careers after redundancy or business sales. Rachel is a trusted thought partner for founders and CEOs at Giant London, using blended learning for the digital age and peer delivery for lasting impact. She enjoys collaborating with fellow coaches globally. At Balfour Beatty, she led an innovative behavioral change program, improving engagement and reducing accidents across 500 supply chain companies. As a managing consultant at the world's largest risk advisor, she trained thousands of staff and coached leaders at British Airways. Rachel's diverse background includes leadership roles in risk consultancy, sales, construction, academia, expedition leading, and adventure racing. She lives with her family in Southeast London. Michael Wen is co-founder of AI Ops Limited and ML Academy, and is a dynamic professional with a diverse background. Starting with the military, where he saw out the second Iraq War, to a successful IT sales career in companies such as Mimecast, BMC Software, and Splunk, before running and owning his businesses. Michael's sales roles have included a wide range of responsibilities, from sales strategy, sales management, process and methodology consultancy, business development consultation, and large enterprise sales and account management. His ability to find value in partnership within prospective target audiences, combined with his strategic vision to repeat success, has earned him recognition and respect amongst his peers. Michael continues to push the boundaries of individual contribution to drive a business, whether they are a BDR or CRO, constantly seeking new challenges and opportunities for growth. So without further delay, it gives me great honor to introduce today's speakers, Chris Danks, Rachel Ivers, and Michael Wen. Ladies and gentlemen, take it away.
Thanks very much for the introduction today, Clarissa. So hello and welcome from a very sunny Germany today. My name is Chris Thanks and I'm the founder of the Leadership Collective, as Clarissa mentioned. So our goal as a strategic HRCI partner is to provide regular content and insights on the most pressing issues HRCI certified professionals have, whilst enabling you to gain the relevant credits. Our HRCI certified professionals get 3 months completely free access with the Leadership Collective. The link should be in the chat now and will appear throughout the webinar if you'd like to take a look. So we know that as an HR professional or HR leader, it's often hard to access the support needed on a daily basis to perform at your best. Our aim is to be the primary resource that you call upon to support and help you break through barriers preventing you from realizing your goals. So basically, we are a community of HR professionals and leaders, and our community offers you 4 different ways that we can help. So the first is our peer-to-peer component. So we host regular events such as this one, and we also deliver several other formats such as 15-person roundtables and workshops, virtual and also increasingly in person. So the topics range from the logistics of global expansion to reconciling diverse cultures and everything in between. We'll now be posting links to the virtual roundtable events starting from next week that are hosted by the Leadership Collective. But as I mentioned, they're limited to 15 seats per roundtable. So these events offer the value of learning and solving complex HR challenges whilst gaining an additional HR certification credit and the chance to network with other HR professionals like yourselves. So we try and accommodate people as best we can, but there is a limited capacity to maximize the value of the interaction in the format that we offer. So again, another link will be presented to you in the chat now and throughout the webinar. So that you can take a look at our events that are coming up. And as I said, there's a multitude of different structures to the events and different topics. So in conjunction with HRCI, we also have a Slack and a WhatsApp channel to continue conversations between members and experts in lots of different areas to enable you to solve real problems. Here you can interact with our expert speakers, our panelists, such as Mike and Rachel here today, and also other HR leaders, as well as industry experts. You'll find additional HR-related content on both channels. So once again, it will be in the Slack channel now and throughout the webinar, a link to signing up to the WhatsApp or Slack, whichever your preference, whichever your platform choice. The third area is around content. So we're in the process of building a content platform which has a particular focus on supporting you in the most relevant and pressing topics. So content ranges from white papers, blogs, video content, short courses, and lots of other types of content to support you in your day-to-day role as an HR professional or leader. If you do have any thoughts or comments, we'd love to hear from you in the Slack and the WhatsApp channel, particularly to let us know what topics you would like us to cover in the future, to give us a bit of a steer. So the next area is advisory. So we provide pragmatic advisory support in helping you with your day-to-day challenges. So we're experts in lots of different areas, but we don't know everything. And this is why we brought together a network of experts in lots of different specialisms across the world to help you. So in addition, if you're looking for a new service, you want free agnostic advice in selecting the right provider that's right for your business, we can definitely help. So for example, this may become relevant when facing the complexities of geographical expansion and trying to decide which country to expand into, whether to get set up a legal entity, whether to use an employer of record solution, for example, or perhaps you're trying to work out which payroll provider you would like to work with. All of these things are things that we can help guide you on. And finally, I want to make you aware of our global recruitment solution, which was originally where we started. So our global recruitment service supports businesses in 67 countries. We recruit across a number of industries from technology, engineering, pharmaceutical, biotech, many, many more. And our recruitment is delivered by in-country experts. So as an example, we're currently trying to hire a large number of fashion designers in China. We have lots of work across Latin America, hiring lots of talent, including developers, as well as enterprise technology salespeople across Europe, very relevant to today, which is one of our sweet spots. So just want to mention, if you would like to sign up for a free advisory or consultation call, please also click on the next link, which should be in the chat window, and we'll make all these links available to you throughout the session. So now moving on to our panel discussion, I'd also like to join Clarissa in welcoming Mike and Rachel to the webinar. So good to see you both, and thanks very much for joining us. So let's kick off by discussing the important role of HR and how to influence business and sales leaders to effectively support the development of high-performing sales teams. So just before I throw it across to the panel, a poll should appear on your screen now, which is, who here believes that their senior leaders should take your opinion, who here believes that their senior leadership takes your opinion into account when making strategic decisions? Always, sometimes, seldom, or never. So I'll give you guys a couple of moments just to complete the poll. Okay, so that was pretty quick. So interestingly, 64% of you said sometimes, 20% seldom, 5% never, with 11% saying always. So for those of you that are saying always, pop in the chat and let us know how it's done. So definitely some room for improvement here. So, it would be great to hear some opinions of the panelists now. So Mike, if you could kick us off, having spent decades in enterprise sales and risen up through the ranks to become an established and respected sales leader yourself, what strategies have you seen to be most effective from HR leaders when it comes to influencing key decisions often made by sales leaders or leadership in general?
First of all, Chris, apologies to everybody that got never on behalf of all the salespeople out there. I hope that doesn't happen again. And I'm scared of the people that said always. They sound like very strong characters. I would say that my experience of this is that it can be a really harmonious relationship. It takes a lot of effort for the HR team, I think, to get involved in strategic sales and the strategy of the business and what it's trying to achieve. But I think it's really worth workshopping with sales leaders what it is that they're trying to achieve and how they're trying to achieve it. And it might seem irrelevant, but understanding the markets they're going after, the size of customers, whether they're new business hunting, farming, the type of growth the board are looking for them from them in the next 2 or 3 years. If they're pre-IPO or not, it can be a very big question. That how experienced is the team that they're looking to employ? These things are really important to understand, and they have quite a lot of let's say emotional support that's needed. Sales is a very up and down emotional sport that we all try to play in, and whilst we try to hire people that are very strong characters that are very stable, if you take, for example, a sales strategy that employs 50 straight out of university people, imagine how much that is more difficult to manage from a HR perspective versus a team of 40-year-olds that are been in the industry for 25 years and know their stuff inside out, doing strategic selling. So I think it's really important to get under the covers of it, and I think the support can be hugely influential from HR, but based on the people skills they have, the knowledge they have of the industry, and they can give really great advice to people like myself on maybe ways to rethink what they were planning to do in the first place.
Thanks, Mike. Just a quick question off the back of that. So, for example, if an HR leader was new to an organization, and let's say you were the sales leader, just briefly, how would you advise that HR leader or HR professional managed to get their points across in relation to expanding the sales organization and the best way to do that?
So I think the best way is to one-on-one sessions first. I think build a relationship first and foremost. If you're brand new, it helps to get to know the person that's in front of you, and the bonding and rapport aspect is really key. So get a one-to-one session. Don't put yourself in an audience with your group of people and their group of people. That never works. I've seen that a couple of times and it fails. Start with the bonding and rapport, start with the one-on-one, understand what makes those people personally tick. And then really get to grips with what their ambitions are personally too in that process, because what you really want to do is build a relationship where that person is your champion. So if you was to leave that meeting, that few hours with them, and their CEO was to say, how did that meeting go? If that HR person was to be then getting that feedback from the CEO, you want to hear things like came prepared, had a lot of really great advice, was a really nice person, and actually gave me some really good inflection and some good points to go away and think about. So be very, very good on the preparation, get that one-to-one session and start off your relationship in a really strong way.
Interesting, Mike. Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of variables there, but I think the sentiment is really on point in my experience. So just Rachel, just to bring you in as well, given your experience as a performance coach with senior leaders for many years and having a deep understanding of relational dynamics, I'm sure the audience would love to hear your perspectives on this type of scenario also.
I think a question that I get asked a lot, Chris, and whether we're talking about salespeople influencing their prospects, or whether we're talking about you maybe as HR leaders influencing business leaders or sales leaders. The question I get asked a lot is about why is it that within teams, some people are unbelievable at having influence with others, whereas others, even if they want it, find it very difficult. So I wanted to just touch upon one particular area, and that is influence. And I wondered, Joe, if we could bring up the influence model, because I'm a very visual learner. And I think that probably accounts for what, quarter of the population. So let's have something to look at while I speak about this. That's an awesome car, Joe, loving it. So effectively, whether we're talking about, I don't know if we can find the model somewhere, whether we're talking about you with a leader in the business in terms of influencing them with whatever program or strategy that you'd like to implement, and Mike spoke to a few of those pieces. Effectively, what people are asking, even though they don't necessarily articulate this, but what they're asking is, number one, can I really trust this person on the other side of me? Whether it's you as an HR leader or whether it's a salesperson, can I really trust this person? And do you have credible competency in the specific area that I'm struggling in? And if you can unlock both of those things, you can see 4 filters here: character, chemistry, competency, and credibility. If you can unlock those, then yay, you've got a transaction. And as Mike knows, you'll get to ring the bell and everyone celebrates. But the truth is, we leave such a lot of influence on the table. And the influence that we leave on the table is the opportunity to go between the walls of self-preservation. I'll talk about what that means in a minute. And we get to actually go into longer-term relationship with influence and impact. And that means that they'll always come to you as a trusted advisor. So between the walls of self-preservation means that we have gone into a meeting, whether it's with sales leaders or whether it's with a prospect, we've gone in without anything to hide, without anything to prove, and without anything that we feel like we're going to lose. And if we can honestly answer those questions ourselves, then our walls of self-preservation will start to come down. And why this is relevant is that we need to understand, whether we're in HR or whether we're a salesperson, we need to know, where do we need to grow? Is it in the area of chemistry and character, or is it in the area of competence and credibility? So for me, most of my life, I've led with character and chemistry, and I've basically traded on charisma, because I used to come from the perspective that if your work speaks for itself, don't interrupt. But over time, I've learned that I leave influence on the table, because 50% of the world lead with competency and credibility. So somewhere, in order to unlock all of those 4 codes, you actually need to include competency and credibility. So here's a few tips. If you're anything like me, and that's 50% of the world, here's how to unlock the competency and credibility piece. So that half of the world, they love the data. Show me the facts. Show me where this has been done before. So for example, if you're trying to get a sales training program off the ground and get the board to sign up to it, then why not bring in the data? Google did a fantastic study called Project Aristotle. In Project Aristotle, they talked about how the salespeople, they talked about how people actually need focus on relationships and communication. Joe, could we have up the maximizing team performance tool? Thank you. So a lot of organizations make the mistake of focusing on alignment. They say, guys, can you just get on board? Can we all be on the same page, please? Or they say, how can we wring more out of the sales teams that we've got? They focus on the capacity. But the flywheel technically doesn't go round unless we're focusing first on the communication relationships. Do we have good receiving communication? Do we have good sending of communication? Is there trust? Is there psychological safety? That was the big thing from Project Aristotle. And if you focus on communication relationships, then the flywheel will go round because it creates alignment. Execution usually happens. And then people won't just do their 9-to-5 tick box compliance. Capacity will naturally increase. So I think that where organizations focus on using the data, then it's much more powerful. Thank you, Joe. Another wee statistic. When we were working with Endava, global tech company, we were able to reduce their turnover through leadership development programs to less than 1%. And we need this kind of data in order to influence the board.
Thanks, Rachel. That was some really interesting insights, and yeah, the data that sits behind it is really, really interesting as well. So thanks ever so much for your points around that. Wanted to move on to a different area. There's a few things we want to cover here today to share as much insight as we can. So the next section I wanted to bring up was around sales structures. So since the early 2000s, in my view, sales structures haven't really changed that much. So what we typically see is a team of junior salespeople just starting out in their career, being the first point of contact for potential customers. In many industries, this person could end up running the entire sales process, whilst in more complex sales environments, after their first sales call, discovery call, they flip it to a senior account executive who brings in a sales support function, to help progress the deal to a close, broadly speaking. So before we again throw it back to the panel here, Mike and Rachel, you should see another poll pop up in a second. So broadly speaking, we're curious, is the model that I just described similar to the sales structure in your organization? Now, I know that there's going to be a lot of variables here because you're all in different, very different organizations. So the structure I just described was fairly general. But in your experience, which way does it lean? Is that sort of a typical environment that you currently work in? So very interested to see if people see that as the norm or otherwise. So you should be able to vote now. Just while we're waiting, in my experience in a few organizations, I haven't worked in a business yet that operates much differently to that. Starting to see a few changes, maybe in the, subtle changes in the last couple of roles, but not too much in my background. So I'm very, very curious if you guys here have. Okay, so about just over three quarters of you agree with the statement I just made. So it seems that, that's pretty consistent, although, again, love to hear from the 23% that see it very differently and share your thoughts, please, on how it's different and what's worked and what hasn't. I think that would be very interesting. So let's just look at this a little bit more closely now. So everybody loves to buy, but we all know that, people hate being sold to in general terms. So numerous studies have showed that modern prospects are very close to making a decision by the time that they engage with sales in the first place. So given this change in, buyer behavior, is there an optimized sales structure that companies should implement? And if so, what does that look like? I'll pass that back to you, Rachel, firstly, for your thoughts.
Thank you. I think that any structure that you're going to put in place, and whether you're talking about territory-led, product-led, customer-led, I think that I have actually seen recently, working with a global finance company, they made a move very, very recently to a hybrid between a product-led and territory. Particularly in the Netherlands, their pilot study showed that it was incredibly effective for engagement and seeing the whole life cycle of the product. But I think whatever style of structure is going to be important for your organization, it would be very, very difficult for us to look at a cookie cutter model here, one size fits all. But I think the foundational thing is going to be about salespeople understanding and really believing in the role that they're playing in changing people's lives for good. Because unless they see value in their own role, and unless the organization sees the critical sort of commercial value of their role, then it's very, very difficult to get away from the stigma that exists both out there in the organization. And if you look at some of the statistics, including that only 18% of salespeople really, really love their role and have high levels of satisfaction, the average tenure has now dropped, Mike, down to 1.5 years in a role before they then move on or get burned out, or only 24% are exceeding target. Something quite dramatic, I believe, has to be done. So that fundamental belief in their role is critical. And maybe I can probably only speak really to the high level end of products and services that require a more consultative level sell. Maybe Chris, you can talk to others. But I think that understanding the salesperson's kind of identity when it comes to sales, and Joe, I'd love to see the sales identity matrix. You might have got the impression by now that I love a visual tool. That's because it's more likely to stick, and you've got something really quantitative to go away with. But in terms of identity, if you've got someone who is a casual seller or a hustler, hopefully not many people in the high end are order takers. But in terms of casual sellers, you've got a lot of impact, a lot of conversations there, but very little income. And it takes them a long time to get up to speed. On the opposite end, where you've got high quantity but low quality, again, you're missing out on huge levels of influence to actually have sustainable business. And then you're always having to up your quantity, leaving influence on the table. So what we're aiming for, obviously, is top right. It's green because things grow and flourish there. And you can call it whatever you like, but the basis is that you're calibrating quality with quantity in the right amount. But you're also fighting for, thank you, Joe. Let's go back to gallery view. You're also fighting for the highest possible good of your prospect, which sometimes means bringing them a lot of challenge. They're wanting to pick off lower hanging fruit and just put a sticking plaster over the problem. Whereas if you've done enough great diagnostic as a salesperson, then you're going to be able to identify what the real issue is behind the presenting issue. And in which case you're able to sell a more lasting solution. So that's really, really key, that the salespeople are executing on a proper strategy with problem discovery and reframe. There's not really enough time to talk about it now, but I think let's just leave it at those two things.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. No, appreciate that. And Mike, have you got 3 or 4 things you want to add to that before we move on to talking about the recruitment side of things?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? This is a very interesting topic for such a big audience, because my wife works for Adidas and I've seen their sales team, and it thrives on youth. It thrives on passion, on marketing, on brand. Actually, when I think about it, majority of B2C sales is a lot of marketing and branded fronted stuff that needs, a very different type of sales structure, let's say, where you've got almost marketing salespeople, you've got activation people that are educating on product and just getting people part of an experience and that you can create a massive hype around that makes your product blow out. And you can see that a lot with social influence right now, with a lot of products that have come out with our youngsters out there. I'm sure you can buy other drinks. I'm not sure the license on this, but something like Prime is a really good example of this, right? If you then look at B2B sales, it really changes everything about the dynamic to a large extent, depending. And then you've got the complexity of market size, and Rachel touched on it, the complexity of sale that needs a consultative salesperson. In my experience, there's a few things that make a big difference in the structure. And the structure needs to always be looking at adding value where it's needed. So if your team can say that every interaction with a customer had a fair exchange of value, and you're structured in that way, where the person has the ability to give a fair exchange of value on every bit of communication to a prospect, that is a really good sign that your structure is in the right place. Now, that's a very easy way of measuring today. If you have the wrong or right people fronting whatever part of the sales journey they're on, whether it be a 1 week sales cycle or it be a 9-month sales cycle. And that's probably the quickest way I can summarize something to think about. The structure of it needs to adapt itself depending on those things. And I would say also about the value of the product or service you're selling. If you're selling a multi-million-dollar deal and you've got one person with 5 years of experience interacting with 1 or 2 people in a business at the other end, I think you know where that goes. If you've got a team of people that have expertise, have experience, and if you have a consultative sales process and methodology around that, where it's an engagement that's really informative and quite a delight for a customer, then you're probably in the right place. And so I think the size of the prize at the end of it for both parties is the thing that defines also what structure you should have. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, that gives us some real insight, Mike. And I think, to be honest with you, I think both of these topics are almost webinars in themselves, to be honest. I think that there's a lot more that we could go through. I think we're just kind of scratching the surface here. So no, really appreciate your input. I think it would be good to move to talking about sort of the recruiting side in particular. Now that we've sort of covered off both the influence side with leadership and how to maybe structure a sales team and some of the things to consider, it seems natural that we should really talk about the how to attract some of the best sales professionals. Again, just before we get into this, we have one more poll which is relating to this topic. So how effectively do you think your organization is when it comes to attracting, onboarding and retaining top sales talent? So 5 being very effective and 1 being not effective at all, just to make sure we get the numbering the right way around. So very interesting. I know this is, again, quite a, we're looking across sort of different areas here, but very curious what you believe your current performance is. In a moment, we're going to break this area down into a few different kind of subtopics to hopefully give you guys some insights. Just give it one more moment. Okay, so round about half of you have said middle of the road. So, okay. 7% of you have said not effective at all, 20% gave it a 2, and a few of you, a total of about 28%, between a 4 and a 5. So it looks like a good chunk of the audience here think that there's room for improvement, but some things are working okay. So with that in mind, let's start at the beginning of that journey. So Mike, what do you think high potential or high performing sales professionals look for when they're joining a company? So outside of the usual elements such as competitive salary and benefits and all those normal things.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really great question. I think there's a number of things here that you can really think about as an organization. I think it starts with actually the first interaction and experience they have with the front of house, which is often the person in HR that's headhunting. And let me tell you, you're not getting top sales talent unless you're headhunting them. Often they'll be happy where they are and you have to go find them. So let's just assume for a second that the top talent you're after is something that you have to go and get, that isn't going to come to you for a second. person at the front of your house needs to be very sales literate, whether that be understanding the process, the marketplace, the methodologies, the ambitions of the sales team, the strategy of the company, the overall package. I think that's really important, that those people are brilliantly passionate of the company. They exemplify the culture of your business. They've got a very, very good understanding of what execution means. So if you're going to talk to me, you talk to me on time, you come prepared, you prepare me well for my interviews, etc. I think it's really underestimated how big a deal that first interaction, first impression, and the lasting impression that leaves a candidate that you're hunting for is. I think that's really a good thing to think of. So that's one. But once you're in, I think what people look for from the outside in, and then once they're in, is first and foremost, I think they want more. If we're going to take money out of it for a second, because that's assumed by like the top of a business in sales that is absolutely smashing it will know they can smash it anywhere. So they take that as a bit of a green flag, that as long as your product or service is relevant, they'll say, yes, I can earn money there. They'll ask for examples. They might even be rude and say, what's your top earner? What's the biggest percentage target? That's enough for them. So that's a tick box. But what they want is to find that the sales leadership in the business is going to be able to grow them as a person, as a professional. And when I say grow them, I mean they are not looking for someone that's going to be easy to work for necessarily. They're not looking for somebody that is going to also be on their case 24/7. They're just looking for somebody that's got experience, that's got the ability to coach and train. Like if you look at Rachel's CV, and say, okay, if I'm working underneath Rachel, there's lots of things I can learn that I probably have a rough idea on, but I've never put them into words or visual diagrams. I don't know how to coach a team. And if you've got programs like that in your business, this is massive for a salesperson. And again, money aside, that comes naturally for top sales talent. The growth in their career and their ability to go up in rank often is the one thing that they're really looking for outside of the money attainment that they obviously all assume they're going to get. So coaching and learning is huge. I think culture probably is a big part of that too. So culture, learning and coaching is separate from culture, in my opinion, although they do go together. If you're giving people the ability to have a personal life, high earning people want to spend their money on great things and do great experiences and want to give their family back time that they've wasted because they've given up so much personal time in their life to get to where they are often, right? And we all know those sales guys because they're the top 5% of our company often. And we know they're in the office early. We know they leave late. We know they give up weekends when it comes to a big deal that has to be over the line that week. You know, they'll give up all of that time. That's family, that's babies at home being left to them, to the wives to deliver all of the care and all of the love. And so they need to know the culture is that there is an opportunity to do both ends. And if you do burn the candle, that we will look after your welfare. And I think that's a really big deal in today's world. I think particularly in millennials coming through, they know that mental health is a really big part of their game, and to keep their character strong, they need to look after themselves in both aspects. So that culture piece is really important. And actually your reputation as a business, especially in the sales world, can be easily talked about in a bad way, and news travels fast when it's bad. You can be a poisonous culture, even if you've done all the certifications in the world and you've got great places to work. All the sales guys talk to each other, let me tell you. It's a very small community often in your market, and they will tell you about the bosses that are really hard, really tough on you, give you no breaks, don't understand, don't give you coaching, don't teach you anything. And I think you should all be aware that despite your certifications, you need to be really, really close to the culture of your sales team and how they feel, and make sure that that's getting fed back regularly. So they're a couple of things. So to go back over that, it's sort of examples of success is fine. Front of house recruitment, headhunting, coaching and learning being a primary thing you have to show and prove that you do. And that means external investment in people like Rachel often, culture. And then I would say for the future career path that you might then be able to give those people to retain them is, can they see a 5-year, 10-year future? You probably won't keep salespeople for more than 5 years unless they are seeing something extraordinary in their growth, and you can exemplify that. So they're my versions of the truth.
I'll just add a couple of things there. In my experience, I think that's a brilliant insight. And I think from my experience on the sales and recruiting side, a long time ago, for many years, but there's usually kind of three things when you speak to a company and they say, you ask them, how do we share the value of this role in the company to a potential individual who might want to work with you? It's usually something like, we've got a great product, we're growing, and something along those lines, but rarely anything beyond that. And then on the flip side, the focus is more on what they need to do to attract the right person, which is very, very important. But it's not the it's not the silver bullet. It's not you need to be able to attract these people before you even think about what's in it for you as a hiring organization. So I really do agree with a lot of the points and the sentiments around what you said. So Rachel, just flipping this around, once you've attracted the talent, to my point there, really, what are some of the common traits of a high potential or high performing salesperson that you should look out for?
Yeah, I loved some of those points, Mike. We're going to have a whole other discussion to unpack some of those. But yeah, I wonder if I might just leave you all with a bit of an analogy, Chris. So here in the UK, it's springtime. And what do we go and do? We buy a plant for our office. And I have two options with my plant that I paid top dollar for. I can either hide it under my desk, and I can come back 6 to 9 months later and I can see if it's given me a 10x return on my investment. Or I can put it up here. It can get sunlight. It can get all the nutrients and water it needs. And maybe it might get some company as well. And I think that in the sense that plants love to grow, they want to grow. Salespeople, as Mike has just said, want to grow as well. So why do many organizations then pay top dollar for their salespeople, much of which goes to the recruitment company, and then they expect to come back 18 months later and see a 5x return? Whereas what you've got is salespeople who are nurturing and pouring themselves out to their clients and to their prospects. And what do they need in order to do that? Because you can't give what you don't possess. They also need nurturing. They need the culture and all of those good things that Mike was just telling me about. So I hope that you'll never forget the plant, and that maybe you'll use the analogy maybe in a different way in order to influence the sales leaders and boards in your organizations. But I think also one of the things when spotting amazing sales talent is, to what extent are they aware of their own tendencies? Because if you look at the profiles, I don't know how many of you online are familiar with personality, Myers-Briggs, but it's amazing the number of salespeople that show up as NFs and SFs. So those are the feelers in this world. And it's a shocking, nearly 3/4 are showing up like that. And as they're pouring out to others, they need nurturing themselves. I wonder if we might bring one other model up on the screen, and that is the relational impact tool, Joe. Because what I wanted to sort of put across today is that when we are building relationships, this is something to look out for with incredible salespeople, is, do you get the impression when interviewing them that they are for themselves? Because that's what's going to come across to the client or to the prospect. Or do you get the impression that they've put the lever, I don't know how many of you are in the States, lever, all the way to the right-hand side? And they actually, you get a sense that they're for the client, they're for the prospect more than for themselves. So they're not going to be trying to push for a solution or push for their sales targets. They're actually going to be curious. Now, if you walk into the Nike office, it says on the wall, "Walk in stupid." And that is to say, like, be curious about other people. Particularly if your natural tendency in this world is to talk about yourselves, to tell stories, and to suck a lot of the airtime out of the room. Turn that lever all the way to the right-hand side, and actually build relationship by understanding fully what it is their felt need is, and serve the need in the moment, whether it's bringing up a tool like we're doing here, whether it's adding value of some way to their life, because when we do that, we build the relationship, and sometimes the opportunity then follows and sometimes it doesn't. Thank you so much. Now, the only thing that actually you can take even further than that is if the salespeople actually understand, not just thanks, Joe, you can take the model down and we can go back to gallery view. That if salespeople actually not only demonstrate self-awareness, but also knowledge of others. So if they can tap into some of those decision-making filters of others, now that's an area for salespeople to grow in and to develop. So if they get an understanding that, you know, if someone on the other side of me is wired NF, they're more of a connector, then I'm going to sell them on the basis of how this is going to impact their target audience. How is it going to help their bigger network? If I'm on the other side of an NT, then maybe I'm going to talk about how we're going to be able to scale this solution and how it's never been done before. They're pioneering the way. Maybe if I'm talking to a guardian type person, then we're going to talk about the due diligence that we've done before coming on this call. We're going to talk about where it's been tried and tested before and where there's a clear path to success, because we've actually done a pilot program here, there, and we've got the data. So where salespeople can actually do that or be taught that, then their ability to build consultative selling and relationship building becomes even more powerful. Much more to say, Chris. Like you say, we could do a whole webinar on it, but I'll pause there.
Yeah, no, really. I think, again, coming back to that point of data. So if I just cast my mind back, you know, on the ground recruiting salespeople, you know, a while back, one of the things that I'd noticed was that even on the ground, whether it's in-house recruitment teams or external recruitment teams, but what I've always found fascinating in my experience is even the very, very best recruiters rarely used any or much science, usually any science, when it comes to actually running the recruiting process. So they may, you know, some of the best recruiters that I met were very, very good with, as I'll say, at the art component, but not so much at the science, in terms of, you know, you may see the occasional personality assessment slip into a recruitment process, but never really much more than that. And in some cases, you know, the people that were reading and interpreting the reports weren't necessarily trained to the level that you might need for, you know, for the importance of the outcome. So for me, one of the things that I have a bit of a bee in my bonnet about is that, you know, applying science to the process in one way, shape or form is a step above what the vast majorities of organizations do, and can give you a significant advantage, especially when you're going after people, to Mike's point earlier, that know their worth as salespeople. You know, they're very high in demand. So something that I believe very strongly about is applying, you know, different areas, whether that's around the personality side, the emotional intelligence side, and, you know, other measures that help better predict whether that person's a fit, good for the organization, good for themselves, you know, to make that move, and maximizes your chances of them not only being successful but staying the course, you know, staying beyond the 2, 3, 4 year mark, to be really effective salespeople and role models within the organization. So I think it's a very interesting topic, and as I said, there's a lot more we could go through with this and data to share, but I'm slightly mindful of the time, and there's one area that I know we wanted to cover left, which is around the onboarding, assessment and coaching, which we've kind of grouped together. So I've seen, you know, over the years that many companies deliver a laptop, a sales target, and, you know, basically told that salesperson to, you know, go and sell and hit your number. And right from the start, this is often, you know, it doesn't just impact their ability to perform, but it also creates a kind of buyer's remorse type scenario where the employee, a few weeks in, a couple of months in, thinks they're under a lot of pressure and maybe they've made a bad choice. It kind of gets them off on the wrong foot. So I kind of have the feeling that we intuitively all know what good looks like. But Mike, maybe you can let me know if we're on the same page here. And, you know, could you summarize this, maybe what good looks like? And probably more importantly, how do you influence and support leadership to successfully deliver and implement an impactful onboarding process that enables the talent to flourish?
Yeah, I've seen hugely variable, successful and very poor versions of onboarding, where there's a disconnect between sales leadership and HR processes. The JML process is an interesting one. I think sometimes there's a big disconnect between a joiner and the process that they go through, because it's, you know, they might have to do background checks, credential checks. There's a whole plethora of things post the interview that has to happen. And too often I see sales leaders not really aware of the exact start date and having time in their diary from their supervisors or their buddy, which is a really great system. If you can get somebody peer to peer to help them through their first few weeks, just sit with those people and take them through what is essentially like learning to drive a car for the first time, where muscle memory doesn't happen. You don't know anybody. You don't even know where the toilets are. You don't know much about who's who in the zoo. You don't know if you're walking past the most important person in the organization in that first week, who happens to just have an office on your shop floor, or if there's somebody that quite literally just, you know, looks after the office as a WeWork worker or something like that in a shared office space. So I think the incubation of talent in the first few weeks needs to really be like a really strong handhold, and it needs to be dedicated time, and it needs to be very thoroughly planned. And there needs to be a bunch of people to support that give that person a feeling of a warm and cozy feeling that they're going to be looked after. They're actually thought of as someone important to the organization because people are taking time out and checking in on them. And I think it should be meticulously scheduled into diaries, and there shouldn't be anyone onboarded where they are given a spreadsheet, which I've seen often, where their task is to go around and introduce themselves and go make those things happen. Because I think that in itself just shows that your lack of care and responsibility to people that you've just hired, who you're trying to explain you are the perfect company to work for. You've got this great culture. You're a team sport playing team of winners, etc., etc. That can't be true if you're asking these people to just get off their first week by going through a spreadsheet and doing all the work themselves and trying to fix their own problems. That's not a great place to start, but so often I've seen that. So I think let's start with the first couple of weeks as a focus of, let's have a buddy, let's have managers with their time in the diary. Let's make sure that there is scheduled time before that person's even landed. And let's make sure that communication with the sales team, the hiring manager, is very, very abundantly clear, and probably pushed more than chasing the candidate to close themselves, because I think that's a really, really important part. I think post that, I really see that the team building aspect is something that should be introduced regularly anyway. And I think Rachel will probably agree that people don't gel until you put them in a social and private situation anywhere near as effectively as if you just constantly give them seminars and webinars and in classroom type of, let's say, opportunities to create a relationship. If it's always work and there's zero pleasure and zero bonding and rapport, the difference in the way that team performs and helps and supports itself is completely different from one that goes on social team building exercises. And it doesn't have to be a lot. It can be a simple, let's all grab a drink, non-alcoholic or not, in the bar, outside the office, every first Thursday of the month, right? And if you can't come, you can't come if you've got commitments, but there's an opportunity to just get to know people. And I think in the same respect, if that team member is given the chance to, in a social environment, interact with their newfound team and their boss, that makes a big difference in the first few weeks, where they feel the ability to come and speak to people for support, to get through some of their first initial challenges, where they're learning to drive that car as an experience for the first time.
Thanks, Mike. Really, really interesting. We are at time now, so just to say thanks really to the panel. And yeah, it sounds like there's a lot more we can discuss, which maybe we'll do on a future webinar or event of some description. So thanks to the panel, and I shall pass back to you, Clarissa.
Chris, thank you so much. Rachel and Michael, thank you so much for your interesting insights today. We so appreciate it. As I said earlier, we have HR professionals who get up early and stay up late with us to learn here at HRCI. So not only HR professionals in the US, but also in other countries, I'd like to take a few moments to recognize them. If you did not put your location in the chat, go ahead and do that. Today, we have HR professionals from Iran, Taiwan, the Netherlands, Puerto Rico, Nigeria, Rwanda, Peru, Ghana, Mexico, Romania, Kuwait, Bangladesh, India, the Bahamas, Iran, Canada, and Egypt. If I missed your country, please go ahead and put that in the chat. We probably have time just for one question. Brazil just popped up. Thank you so much. I'll pose this to Rachel and Michael, both of you being experts in the sales world and understanding the tremendous skills that men and women bring to sales roles. And as one of you said, balancing their personal and professional lives. So as HR professionals, as we are bringing this talent into the organization, I'd like each of you to just briefly share with us one leadership competency or behavior that we should be looking for in salespeople. Michael, we'll start with you. One competency.
Wow, that's a tough one to order in words of priority. I'm going to say that I think I'm going to use a soft word here. I'm going to use the word care, and I'm going to mean that in multiple ways. Care in representing the company, representing themselves, and caring the customer, not just in what they're going to deliver for the customer, but the fact that it's going to have a personal and business impact. I think that word care is such a soft word, but it's a great word to find people that actually care about all those aspects, which makes them a brilliant professional to engage with. I think is one quality that probably has a whole bunch of skills and complexities underneath it, but hopefully that's a good summary.
Michael, care is a powerful word and one that we don't intentionally think about enough. So thank you for that. Rachel. Oh, you're on mute.
I'm going to say how powerful the role of the sales leader or the sales manager is. And I'm going to talk about the competency of them, because I feel like we spent quite a bit of time talking about what a great salesperson looks like. So let's just zone in on them for a minute. And if you cast your mind back to long time ago, when the person who was in the forgery crafting iron used to have their niece or their nephew with them, and they would take them through the trade bit by bit. They would do it while the other person watched, and bit by bit they would go around the square and they would be apprenticing. And I think that role of the manager as that old school apprentice is something I believe we are bringing it back, because we're training people to be internal champions, to be catalysts inside organizations, to use the kind of tools that we use, and do the kind of leadership development that we do internally. But I think that the managers need to have those kind of skills, particularly if they don't come naturally to them, in order to nurture and care, in Mike's words, for those salespeople, so that they can nurture and care for those relationships, so that those opportunities might come about through the care relationships that they're building. So I think that's really where the money is helping those sales leaders.
Fantastic. Caring catalysts, leaders who are going to nurture and allow people to be their apprentices. Fantastic. We're going to land it there. Rachel, Michael, Chris, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and knowledge with us. We so appreciate you. And on behalf of all my friends and colleagues from all over the world, we are so grateful. Thank you so much.